Okay, our next speaker is Jackie Park-Burris from Jackie Park-Burris Queen. She produces thousands of queens a year, and it's amazing. I think it's amazing. And to lead that business, to be involved in the beekeeping industry, to help all of us beekeepers and commercial beekeepers, not only in the West Coast, but all over the United States. She is a real tremendous resource, and looking forward to hearing how she got there and how we can help her as she helps us. So a big round of applause.
Do my best here, guys. I'm not one of you little speakers. I don't have my extra letters behind my name. My PhD is in commercial queen breeding in a family. So my journey started as a commercial queen breeder in 1922 when my uncle, who was a curious little boy, went out on his horse and brought home a swarm of bees. And his father was a farmer and thought he was a little strange child, but he really liked it, so he kept doing it. His first swarm didn't live through the winter, so he went out and got some more, and he learned that he had to put cotton in his horse's ears or his horse wouldn't let him on with the buzzing sounds of bees. So he went on to do 4-H and found a local beekeeper to help him learn how to use the smoker and stuff. And pretty soon he started a little hobby business, and he started raising his own queens and splitting hives. And eventually, when he went to marry my aunt, he had to sell some hives so he could afford a wedding. Uncle Homer, he married very well, not monetarily, but supportively. Annie Lois was all in. It was an occupation she loved, and they had a wonderful reunion and were totally devoted to their bees and passed it on to the rest of us. They started shipping packages to Canada in the early 1940s, and because we didn't have an infrastructure to truck them, they put them on rail cars and sent them up there. And you can't see very well. That's Uncle Homer, and this is them preparing them for the rail cars. They're close to where we live, you know. So that was a fun thing when we found all these older pictures to do. And he started taking his bees to the almonds, and when he started taking them to the almonds, they didn't pay, but he knew his bees did really well there, so he just kept leaving them there. And he talked to an almond grower that was from the Mead family, and to this day, we still take bees to the Mead orchards. And somewhere along the line, you know, they started realizing how important bees were to the pollination. And that's why we have the almond industry that we have now. In that, it was kind of a fun idea to realize that he did it before you paid him. So because he was shipping packages to Canada and saw the honey production, my dad once said that the packages paid the bees, but the honey crop was good for your soul. So Uncle Homer couldn't help himself, and he went up there, and it's been documented he was one of the first beekeepers to ever make over 1 million pounds of honey. And in the little house that Annie Lois and Uncle Homer lived in, when he would give you a tour, as you went around the corner to the next room, he'd say, and we bought this with the Manzanita crop of 1944 as he went. So in 1960, my uncle and aunt sold my dad 1,000 hives and some nukes, and that's when Dad started J Park Beef Farms. My dad was 20 years younger than my uncle. My granny had 9 kids, and Uncle Homer was one of the oldest ones, and my dad was the baby. So Dad started, and shortly after that, he sold some bees to my cousin Steve and his wife, and then Glenda and Shannon, Steve's sister and brother-in-law, they bought into the bee business. So now there's 3 of them going, and all of us kids played in the bees with them. My claim to fame as a child was, that says 2 years old, it should say 3. When I was 3 years old, I crawled in this spare tire right here, and I knew I wanted to go with Dad, and if, they found you, they would pull you out and you'd have to stay home with Mom, and Mom wasn't any fun. And I loved going out with Dad. So Dad jumped in the truck and took me to a bee yard an hour and a half away from the house. And he didn't know I was there. And I remember the story, or I've been told it so many times in my life that I remember it that way. I'm not really sure which, but I vaguely remember we went down a dirt road really long, and my dad got out and opened the gate, drove the bee truck in, and he went to shut the gate, and I started hollering, "Daddy, Daddy." And he said the hair stood up on the back of his neck because he was out in the middle of nowhere, and he could hear me. And he said he looked all around, and the sound was coming from under the truck. And he looked under the truck, and all he could see was the whites of my eyes because I was so dusty from the dirt road. So Dad pulled me out and put me in the truck and was so sweet to me. "Oh, honey, we got to get to a phone. We got to call your mom." And so we went a little ways because obviously there was no cell phones then. And we called my mom, and we got home, and the yard was already full of people. The sheriff was there. My siblings were out in the field calling for me. And my mom grabbed me and took me in the back room and blistered my butt and said, "You will not do that again. That was not cute. That was not funny. And I don't want you to think you can get attention doing that." Growing up in a beekeeping family, your mom puts towels and pictures and rugs and everything bees. And as a teenager, I kind of went off on her one day and said, "Mom, I am sick of this stuff. You put another bee towel in my bathroom, I'm leaving." And now this is my front door. It's etched in my bee logo. And this is one of my many pictures of, it looks like a bee gallery in my house, and every towel is a bee towel, bee related to every holiday that you can think of, And as, you want to go out and play with the bees, but you don't want to get stung because you're a teenage girl, and, you tiptoe around, and pretty soon Dad just yells at me and he said, "You're going to get stung, face it." And for some reason or other, that worked for me. From then on, it was like, that's just the way it goes. And I knew if I made any kind of a fuss about it, my brothers were watching, because my brothers would just as soon I'd been back in the house. And I wanted to be outside, and they thought I should go help Mom and they should help Dad. So I learned to take stingers pretty good. And it's funny when I hire young kids now, and they'll start to whine about a stinger or something. I'll look at them and I'll go, "Jesus, I'm a girl and I'm not whining, And I'm hoping that they will absorb that and be better about it. And I think they generally are. I did attend the local college for a couple years. When I was about 17, I went to work in a dress shop. Thought that might be something I wanted to do while I was going to college at the local junior college, thinking I wanted to be a preschool teacher. And you had to go out into the hallway to see what the weather was. And these women came in, and they were all dressed up to shop. And I thought, what kind of life is this? I missed Dad, and I missed being out in the field and enjoying a picnic lunch. I learned to work without gloves because we handle queens, so we can't have our help wearing gloves. So we don't garb up. That is basically the veil that I wear 99% of the time, unless I'm dumping package bees. Or, you're loading a semi and it's late and it's summertime and you've just taken supers off and they're hanging out to the cleat. They'll crawl up your legs for sure. That I might wear a pair of coveralls. Bees are gentle. I like to catch queens in my shorts and my tank top, so I have to keep them gentle. My dad was a blast to hang out with. So that was a bee convention. I think it was in San Francisco or something when they had that. Despite the poor pay, he had several guys that stayed with him his whole career. And, all of us kids wanted to work with him. He was Homer's baby brother. He was Steve's uncle. We had a good life. Everything was good. Dad went to Montana and bought a bee outfit, a honey production outfit in White Sulphur Springs. And the following year, my cousin Steve went up and bought an outfit next to him. And we had great honey pastures and even better elk hunting, my dad said. So it was a good life. Then in July 21st, 1987, everything changed. Dad was making the best honey crop he had ever made, but he wasn't feeling good. And so they took him to the hospital. And at home, they called and said, Dad had an inoperable cancer, a brain tumor, and he was 54 years old. That New Year's, we're celebrating about 4 or 5 months later. Dad's in a wheelchair. We're all heartbroken. And my cousin Steve walks in and says the Canadian border has closed. Well, 85% of my family's income was selling packaged bees and queens to Canada. And we lost Dad that spring, and the entire package and queen people there in Northern California had to reinvent themselves. So we had to figure out how to make a living without being able to sell packages to Canada. Luckily, Dad had bought the outfit in Montana, so we had some honey production. It just so coincided that there was about 3 or 4 years there that they had a drought in Montana. So, I mean, we really are resilient. It's amazing that we're still here after having to figure it all out in a completely different way. The 90s were very hard on queen and package producers in Northern California. That was almost about coinciding with the trachea mite, the poor honey prices, the varroa mite was coming. It was a little tough. And this was an ad that they used to run. We shipped bees to Canada for over 40 years before they shut the border 35 years ago. And recently there's a lot of talk about opening the border back up, and I kind of shrug my shoulders. I don't know if I want that or not. I haven't decided. But we're going through the motions and answering the questions that are being asked of the package producers. So in 1994, my mom sold me the queen rearing portion of my parents' business, and it was a terrible time to buy a business. It was in bad shape. I had a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old at home. My husband went to work before dark and didn't come home until after dark, but I loved to raise queens. That's what I wanted to do. We had locations in Oregon that I took the bees to summer, and I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning to get the crew up there. So my mom would come over and sit with my kids, and when they woke up, take them to school. So my mom was incredible help to me. Could not have done it without my mom. Then about the 2000s, things started to change a little bit. And it was a good year for my queen business. The almond acreage exploded, and the queens were just going out the front door. This is some fun stuff that I like to do. That was like a 3,000 queen day that we were shipping. These are my Dave Tarpey A's that I got. The whole idea is you want a quality queen, not just a queen. And when you're doing this kind of production, you really have to pay attention, because it's easy to let stuff fall to the side. I have numerous queen yards for that very purpose. I probably have well over 30 nuke yards that are scattered out, just so that I can make them in smaller increments so that I have better percentages and take when I do it. These are my kids. My son went to UC Davis, and then he went on to McGeorge School of Law, and he was practicing law in Las Vegas. I thought I was good. I thought I did that. Then I got a phone call from him. He wants to come home and work the bees. He doesn't like a cubby. Can't live in a cubby, tired of writing depositions. And so he came home, and a few years later, he started his own queen business, and he calls it Park Legacy Queens. I thought he named it very well. Randall happened to be the only one in the family who was allergic to bees. When he was 3 years old, he was riding his bicycle through the bee yard and crashed and got stung in the head, and we had to rush him to the hospital. So then we had to go through the desensitization shots, and he got to where he could take a stinger, but we didn't ever expose him if we didn't have to. We tried hard not to. So he grew up with kind of a not so sure he liked bees thing, because they kept him in the house way more. He's now a CPA, and he does all of our books. So he does the books for 5 beekeeping outfits that are all parks. And it works for the accounting firm that we all had been doing business with. When he was in grammar school, he had to have an EpiPen, and we had to have the protocol for if he got stung, what happened. And the secretary always teased us because I delivered the EpiPen in my bee truck on the way to a bee yard. So she said she wasn't sure about that. Being a girl in a male-dominated business, I don't really think that I had it harder. I just had it differently. It was just what I did. I mean, I knew all the jobs. As a farm child, you do all the jobs on the farm. So I knew how to do all the jobs on the farm. So when someone came to work for me, it was easy to explain to them how to do something because I'd done it. And I was with them all the time. I loved being in my bees. And I think that really helped. I can remember one of the first times that I had to go to the almonds after we had lost Dad. And a fellow beekeeper said to me, Jackie, they're going to have a hard time with you because you're a woman and this is a male-dominated, industry. And I really didn't. A lot of the orchards that we were going to, I'd already been to, and they told me, we're not worried about you. We've seen you out here since you were a kid. So we know you can do this. And one of them, always told his friends I was the best beekeeper they ever had, so it worked well. And I think you could use that woman thing a little bit if you wanted to. So just for fun, I was going through the scales one night. We were all hauling out of the almonds. And I had 4 of my trucks in front of me had already gone through. And I went through and I got red lighted. And they had gotten right on through. So I had to go around and, I was all loaded up for him because it was, 11:30. I'd been working since 6 that morning. And I said, what the hell? My 4 guys went right through. He gave them all green lights. You pulled the girl in? What's this all about? The guy jumped back. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He just started apologizing profusely. And he said, it was your stickers. Your stickers weren't right. I said, hey, I got pulled over by a jump scale yesterday. Look, I got this green sticker saying I'm all good. No, it's the other ones. They don't understand. It's okay. You can fix them tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Bye-bye. So one time I had a highway patrolman that pulled me over and was inspecting my truck and said that my brakes needed adjusting. Well, this was a 2-ton truck. I don't know how to adjust the brakes. I know how to drive it, but I don't know how to adjust the brakes. But when I explained that to him, he goes, well, come here. And he gets down and he shows me how, and he's crawling under the truck doing it. And I said, well, thank you. And he said, you better learn how to do it, hon. Okay, I will. No problem. So I'm happiest catching queens. I enjoy that more than anything. Catching queens on an 80-degree day when they're an 85% take is the best day in the world you can have. You're in your shorts, your tank top, you're having a picnic lunch. What a better life than that, And I love to go visit my queen customers. So I'm in Colorado visiting my friend Jamie Johnston there. This here is a semi truck that I'm sending to Montana. And that's always enjoyable to know that you're going to honey pasture in the beautiful state of Montana. This is catching queens. So I think most of you understand that. In all of these mating nukes, there's a division. So I can catch 2 queens out of each one. My mating nukes are 14 by 14. They're not the birdhouse nukes that Sue was showing you a couple days ago. I don't like those. I don't think they're the best environment for a queen. I think this is probably more expensive to raise a queen this way, but I answer the phone when the queen customer calls. So I want to sell them the best product I can. So they're made up from a mother colony. So they have emerging brood. They have, royal jelly. They have pollen. They have everything that the bee needs to be fed the moment she is born. So I like that. And in the beautiful weather that we mostly get in Northern California during queen season, she'll go out and mate, and we'll go through these nukes maybe 4 or 5 times, putting more cells in them. I probably graft over 10,000 cells a week. It's a lot. It's a lot more than I wanted at times. But so some of my really fun stuff is playing with the scientists. They come to visit me, and it's always a kick in the pants. When they started the Be Informed project, Marla came up to Northern California to talk to all of us queen breeders. And we all met, all the Park family got together, and she went to asking us everything: what we fed them, when we fed them, what we treated them with, how we treated them. And I saw her roll her eyes quite a bit, but we were healthy. We were not crashing. So it was working. And I teased her later. I said, Jesus, yes, it's everything but the size of our underwear, for Christ's sakes. And she started her little plan that, it was during the whole CCD thing that, in theory, you guys, lasted about 12 minutes. CCD, we've been carrying it on for years. And I roll my eyes when someone says CCD, because there's really only about 10 hives that died of CCD. The rest of it is a piece of pie. It's a whole pie, and it's all cut up with mites and lack of forage and blah, 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 Well, I work on politics in California, so I let them blabber about it if they want to, because it gets us things. This is Marla, and this is Katie Lee. This is Rob, who's one of our original B team members. There's Marla. There's Ben. He's a team member was Oregon, now it's Minnesota. This is Kate. He's from Texas. He's a real fun kid to work with. When he looks at one of my queens, he says, whoa, that thing, it's got a freight train following it. I'm like, yeah, it's nice, huh? I really enjoy him. He's fun. This is Megan Mahoney, who stopped by with Katie Lee. And this is Matt, who is from Colorado. So we got quite an array there. I don't know what happened to Anne Marie that day, but I had just about everybody else. We had Kara, too. It was fun. This is in my queen room in between breaks. So here's a really good score, as you can see. That was well. Marla was into doing something different, so everybody got 2 cones instead of 1. So that was interesting. And as you can see, some of my hives are on pallets, some of them aren't. I was a queen outfit, so when I started, I wasn't on pallets. I have a lot of trucks with booms. I moved my queen's stuff around with booms. I have over 1,000 mother colonies that I take to the almonds and then bring back and make the baby nukes out of. And we move all of those with the boom trucks. And then some of them are on the pallets. The guys like the pallets a little better, I think. Everybody likes to work them when they're not on pallets, because it's the same thing that Tammy was saying, that, by the time you're at the second or third one, they know you're coming. And that's not as good as if you get to surprise them. So one of the joys of working with the scientists was that when Brandon finally wrote his paper on the cryogenic, and him being able to do that, it was record breaking. That was huge. I don't know that the industry really understands how huge that was, Sue. It was a big deal. And Stephen and Brandon came down and said, we want to put you in the tank, because USDA had been trying to get some semen to put into the, let's see if I can say this correctly, the cryogenics lab in the germplasm center for the USDA Ag in Fort Collins, Colorado, where everybody sends their ag stuff. There is sheep, pigs, goats. They have all kinds of species there. They even had a wing for plants, where if there was a disaster, they could recreate them. So they had embryos and they had semen for all of these things. They don't have an embryo yet for queens, but they do now have the semen. So they wanted that in the tank. They had been trying it themselves and had never been able to accomplish it. So when Brandon wrote his paper, they contacted him. So he got a hold of me, and Ray Alvarez and I went there. And when he came and told me he was going to do it, would you be interested, blah, blah, blah. And I said, if I could be the first one in. And Steve said, you can be the first one in. So I was. So that was really fun for me. And I had the greatest pleasure of getting to go. I know you saw some of these yesterday. I didn't know what slide Sue was going to use, but her and I, she took me to Italy. She had brought me some bees, and I had 2 or 3 hives that she had brought from one of her trips previous to taking me. And I had them in the backyard, and she called me and said, would you graft me some virgins from those? So I went out and I picked out all the breeder queen stock that day, and my crew was grafting. And I went over to Sue's hives to get some of them, and they ran me back in the warehouse, and I had to tape my pant legs up, and I was just determined I was going to get that stuff for her. And I went out and got it, and I said, don't graft any of it for me. This is for her. And then I called her, and I said, you can have these back. I don't like them. And she goes, well, you're just so dang picky. Why don't I just take you with me? Oh, gee, okay. That works. So we got to go there, and we got to go see these bee breeders were incredibly generous with their time, and they were making us meals that were off the charts. They were showing us all their stuff. They're very proud of their stuff, and that was extremely enjoyable. This is Fausto, who was the president of the Queen Breeders, I think, when Sue first started going there. And he stayed with us and helped us. And I think we all visited with him numerous other trips that we made. I ended up getting to go 3 times. Sue took me there twice. And while she was there, she sold me to the Italian Queen Breeders. And their association was having an annual convention. And she had spoke at it the year before. So Marla was going back to speak the next year, and they invited me to go. So I went back with Marla and went to that one. This here was the bee lab where all of the bee breeders sent their stock to be evaluated. So we had a great opportunity. Poor Sue, she gets stuck in the lab getting, drone semen, and we're just bringing her drones, and she's squishing drones, and we're out playing in the bees. We always felt kind of bad, and you could always tell she grumbled a little bit. She would like to be out a little more, I think. And we went through their beehives, and Steve and I went back in, and we told Cecilia, we said, those guys need supers. You need to get some supers on them, because they were supposed to grade them on how well they did. And we thought they needed to do a little beekeeping. So you said, it's very hard to keep up with everything, So it was interesting to see that that's how their system worked. And she sat down and was explaining to us how many queens they produced in the entire country of Italy. And Sue looked at me real funny because I knew what she was thinking. We were adding it up in our head, and my family produced as many queens as the entire country of Italy. And on the last trip, we went to Slovenia after we went to Italy. And this was, I know Sue showed this picture yesterday. Right here are the entrances to those beehives that sit underneath that bed. But you guys, she tolerates the Italian bees for me, but she loves her carnelians. And she was like a kid in a candy store, just crazy about it. I just became the photographer that day because I am really adamant about mine, and I really love my Italians, and I want a yellow bee, and she wants a gray bee. And when she was at Davis, there's a gal down there. She was the publicity gal for the entomology department. And she's just a sweet little gal. She took pictures of everything. And I said, don't you want some pictures of some pretty bees? And she goes, what do you mean? And Sue brought her up to my house. Sue brought one of her classes up to my house. And they were all going through my backyard. And we were showing them a commercial queen outfit. And she's taking pictures of my yellow Italians. And she's winking at me. Right, they're pretty. They're pretty. And now the gal that is running UC Davis is getting all Jackie Queens. So the entire UC Davis has turned yellow, Sue. And I'll get pictures from Kathy periodically. So we went back, and Fausto gave us the tour that Sue was talking about her getting to go to. I could not believe how many bees that Fausto had to show us. We went to the palace of the Pope. When they built the Vatican, he was the Pope, and he loved bees. Bees was his thing, and he paid more money for things that had bees. So there are bees everywhere, all through that. And you can see it's on the ceiling. There's bees everywhere. It was just beautiful. We went through his palace, and then he took us to the Vatican. I never would have saw that. Sue and I spent some time in Rome enjoying everything, but we didn't go to the Vatican because it was always crowded. And he took us straight to the Vatican, and we were there at a time of year that it wasn't crowded. And this is Marla and I speaking to this group, and they, again, treated you like royalty. And we got done talking. They gave us flowers and everything. It was really nice how all the speakers got flowers. So, and then, when you do all the politics in the association, they give you a lot of awards. And right here, they're giving Sue an award for her service to the industry and what she had done. And I was getting Beekeeper of the Year that year. Here I'm getting a President's Award. And here I got the Eric Bunsen Award. And Eric sent me an email telling me he couldn't think of anyone else who deserved it more than me that year. and we lost him 2 months later. And here we're opening a USDA lab on the UC Davis campus. So that was really fun, and it's great that we have more stuff in California because that's where the bees are. They're in California. That's where it needs to go. And our family, you know, this is like your afternoon bee shots of bee beards. Everybody has one in their slides. In our little town, Palisadro, my queen customers call it Park-Cedro, but beekeeping was the biggest industry. So for 42 years now, we've had a bee festival. This is my dad. That was the very first bee beard that we ever did. This was my son last year. This was one that I had done. We all have done numerous ones. And here's my granddaughter with her bee beard, as close as she's going to get to him. So there are, let me see if I can get this right. There are 3 second-generation beekeeping businesses in my family and 4 third-generation beekeepers in my family. So here is the second generation. I don't know if any of you guys know. This is Shannon and Glenda Wooten. This is me and my husband, Jim. This is Bonnie and Pat Stair. Pat had worked for Uncle Homer for over 26 years. He didn't want to retire, but he couldn't remember where the bee yards were. So we had to have a negotiation with him. And Pat bought the bees, but left them there. So Uncle Homer would come out and tell the guys what to do. And then he would go back in the house and Pat would go, okay, stay with the plan. And it worked really well for him to have them in front of him because we didn't want to take them away. And this is my cousin Steve Park and his wife Sharon. I always said I was 2.5 because Uncle Homer was 20 years older than my dad, and he got my dad doing it like your father would. But theoretically, this is third generation. That's my son Ryan and his wife. And this is my sister's kid, Darren, who worked for me since he was 11. And I ended up selling him some bees. This is Steve's daughter and son-in-law. I market their queens through my business. This is Pat Stair's kids. He's already sold the business to his kids. And this is Shannon and Glenda's son and daughter-in-law. So we're hoping this will be the next generation. So these are my 4 grandchildren, and it's just a tradition that you're born in a bee box, right? So this is the oldest one, Parker. This is the youngest one, Rory. This is Jackson. And this is Maverick James. So his box says Park Legacy, as you can see. The bees have been good to my family. We are very lucky, and I'm very appreciative to this industry. It's been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of really fun people. We have had to overcome some major events, but we have fun, and it's like coming to this meeting. You didn't know what to expect because I looked at the list, and most of it was scientists and not too many me's. But as I've sat here and listened, I've really enjoyed the speeches and appreciate the invitation. So thank you, Jerry, very much. That's it.
Wasn't that a great talk? And the scale of her business and her family's business and how it supports the beekeeping industry is amazing. And so these are things that most people don't know about. You've heard from her and today. And so there again, I'm going to put the onus on you. You got to take this information out.